Richard Wetherill ANASAZI, pioneer explorer of Southwestern ruins, a biography by Frank McNitt, with maps and drawings by the author. Copyright 1957. Prologue. An introduction to some of the principles in this story. The scene is a dusty road at evening near the Triangle Bar Triangle Ranch in Chaco Canyon in northwestern New Mexico. The date, June 22nd, 1910. Part 1. A number of years ago, Jesse Nussbaum and I were exploring cliff dwellings on the west side of Mesa Verde. We saw one that was high up on the canyon wall opposite us and decided to look into it. It was a terribly hard climb up a sheer wall and across a narrow ledge with a long drop below, but we finally made it. With great elation over our discovery and the successful climb, we peered down through an opening in the rocks at our ruin, and right there before our eyes was an upended slab of stone. On it we read these words: "What fools these mortals be. R. Wetherill." A quote by Alfred Vincent Kidder. Prologue. Richard Wetherill was murdered at 6 o'clock in the evening on June 22nd, 1910. He died in an ambush in the shadows of a bend in Chaco Canyon, half a mile below Pueblo Bonito, where a wagon trail, now the road to Farmington, New Mexico, climbs through jumbled rock to the high mesa. 5 or 6 Navajos had gathered there as Wetherill and the cowboy Bill Finn drove a small bunch of cattle down the canyon. The cattle were drags or drifters from a large herd Sheriff Tom Tal had brought up from Texas. It was a dry year, driest at Gallup, where Sheriff Tal lived, and the grazing was poor even in Chaco Canyon. But Wetherill had the Navajos dig water holes along the Escavada and told the sheriff he could bring his cattle here. They came through the gap that morning under a rolling cloud of gray dust. At Rincon del Camino, the place where he died, the road turns to cross a shallow end of the draw, among fallen rock and waist-high covering of spiky olive-green greasewood. The coloration is such that the eyes, adjusting from the dazzling low sun to the blue shadows, can easily mistake a motionless man or horse for part of the landscape. Erosion has cut the canyon floor so deeply with washes and arroyos that, to avoid them, the road makes several tortuous bends. For these reasons, and probably because the sheriff's cattle were raising a fair dust, Wetherill and the cowboy did not see signs of danger until it was too late. In the greasewood fringing the draw, a Navajo, standing beside his horse, raised his rifle. 2 shots and then a third from a .33 caliber Winchester echoed against the canyon walls. The first bullet whined past Bill Finn. The second pierced Richard Wetherill's right hand, entered his chest, and killed him instantly. The third bullet was fired at nearly point-blank range after Wetherill slipped from the saddle and lay sprawled on the sand. There had been a short interval between the second and third shots as the Navajo walked 50 yards to where the body had fallen. He crouched over it, muttering, "Are you sick, ANASAZI?" There was no response. The Navajo pointed the muzzle of his rifle downward. His third shot tore away the right side of Wetherill's head. At the same moment, Finn wheeled his horse. Several other Indians were behind him. He broke through the ambush, exchanged a few shots with the Indians, and headed at a run towards Pueblo Bonito. Behind him, outdistanced, came the Navajo Thomas Padilla. The sound of firing reached the ranch, bringing Marietta Wetherill to a bedroom window. In the doorway of her room, in the bunkhouse across the yard, appeared the alarmed, inquiring face of Eleanor Quick, the schoolteacher for the Wetherill children. For a brief, still moment, the women faced each other across this distance. They heard Finn's horse pounding down the road. Several Mexicans ran toward the ware room. A string of shrill yelps sounded like a dog or coyote, but these cries were Navajo. 2 Indians who had been waiting under the north cliff near Pueblo Bonito whipped their horses toward the road, riding diagonally to head Finn off before he reached the ranch gate. Marietta and Miss Quick had heard their yelping. Hostine Sobakis crossed the cowboy's path first, swinging a quirt or club down on Finn's shoulders and ignoring the revolver Finn aimed at him but did not fire. Trailing to one side, armed with a pistol, which may or may not have been loaded, was Joe Hostine Yazi. Finn's horse had pulled ahead when Finn finally fired 4 times. Hostine Sao was hit by a 4th bullet in the left side, just above the hip. He bent forward in the saddle, and his horse slowed as Finn wire fence circled the warehouse and entered the yard. Joe Yazi, meanwhile, was finding shelter behind the blacksmith shop. Marietta Wetherill met Finn at the ranch house door. "Where are the children?" he demanded. "I don't know." "Get 'em in here quick, hear me? Get 'em quick. We've had trouble." He started for Wetherill's office, intending to find a rifle. Marietta stopped him. "Where is Mr. Wetherill?" "He's down there." Finn shook off the hand holding her arm. "If there's trouble down there, why aren't you with him?" "Because they've killed him," Finn told her, and then he went for the rifle. From her vantage point, Miss Quick observed that Mrs. Wetherill, who'd been racing from the back door, divined that he, Finn, had no cartridges and met him just as he jumped from the horse with a 6-shooter, and Joe Yazi raised his gun to shoot her but had no cartridges either. Mr. Finn ran through the house, got his Winchester, and came out the door, but every Indian had vanished. Soon after, she added, Richard Wetherill's big sorrel horse trotted into the yard, the saddle empty and the stirrups swinging. Richard Wetherill's body was brought to the ranch in a wagon and laid out in the back porch awaiting the arrival of the authorities from Farmington. Early the second day, a clerk at Crown Point Agency appeared to inquire about the shooting, saying he represented Superintendent Samuel F. Stacher, who had not yet returned from a trip to Oklahoma. This was not really necessary because Marietta knew him. His name was PB6. The welcome he received, as he later described it to John Charles, the supervisor from the Interior Department, was chilling. All was quiet in the canyon when he rode up to the ranch house at Pueblo Bonito, Six said. Standing in the doorway as though expecting someone, he found Marietta Wetherill. She was pale and watched him with a fixed expression as he approached. Before he could say a word, she spoke in a tight, frozen voice. "Go to the back porch and see what you've done." "I hope you do not connect me with this affair in any way," Six replied. He was about to say more when Marietta Wetherill interrupted him. "You and your kind have brought this about." Then she turned and entered the house. Six reported to John Charles, and with the door between them he could hear her crying. He did not see her again that day. And I feel like New York City. Get me to the farm.